Change is the only constant. Between Utopia and Dystopia, a collection of telltales from Val's Sanctuary of Creativity. In the background, the media is reporting the death of Queen Elizabeth II and the proclamation of the new king. She had reigned for 70 years in Great Britain, the Commonwealth and beyond. This event will bring massive change throughout a large part of the world. In this new age, many still embrace the monarchical element of reign. Others find it outdated. Like with much of everything, opinions and experiences vary to the stretch of a rubber band. I am living in the United States, a country that declared its independence from Great Britain almost 250 years ago. We celebrate this independence once a year, every 4th of July. Major news channels throughout the world, the United States included, interrupted their regular programming broadcasts to report the news about the Queen's death and the King's succession. The President of the United States intends on attending the funeral. I'm thinking that the world is a funny place. The Queen at the time of her death was my mother's age. With this significant event, personal history and lifetimes are being rekindled in my memory. Life-defining events and the transformations that are being experienced in this century and beyond come to mind. My mother passed away 2 years ago. She was born during the Depression era, between World War I and World War II, in a border region that became part of Italy during World War I. Times were hard, especially for her parents. Her father had to migrate, and her mother was left with 4 children to raise. My mother was the youngest. She shared stories about leaving home on a horse and buggy, never to return again until much later in life. This may not sound alarming by today's standards, as many people often relocate. However, in that part of the world, generations pass down to new generations, whatever land and worldly goods were generated. This generational relationship ensured that families lived in the same region for many lifetimes. My mother remembers stealing honey and eating it while hiding under the bed. She always treasured honey to her last days. My mother knew how to create value and to preserve it. Luck was one of her teachers. My father was born in a resort retreat in the middle of the woods on the north side of the valley, the Pustertal or Valpusteria, where the wealthy and noble traveled to, despite the depression, to take their healing, mineral-rich mud baths. I heard that the guests loved the beautiful boy that was my father. He was raised without a father and by a substitute mother. I don't know much about his childhood, except from pictures and visits to the now overgrown woods. The main house of the resort was built into the mountains, and there was a small, ornate chapel on the one side. On the other side, there stood a larger pink building. It was the guest house with the baths. In the middle of the small plaza, there was a stone trough with water running eternally. I remember drinking aranciata, a sparkling orange drink, on one of our many Sunday visits there. Benches and tables overflowed with visitors, eating and drinking beside the chestnut trees. The lady in charge of running the resort was my godmother. I heard that my father should have been the rightful heir. Today, the once enchanting place is overgrown and in ruins. I'm looking at the picture of a handsome young man in an Italian soldier's uniform. It was taken during my father's military service in Rome, when he barely spoke Italian. He was always interested in the new, the modern, and the innovative. His mind expanded. My parents found each other and formed a great partnership that resulted in a growing and lasting heritage. They both had a desire for raising a family. They created one with much success. A very traditional one, where the mother was the queen of the house and the father was the king of the reign. They bounced success off each other and loved life most of the time, from what I can recall. In between, hardships came and went. Both pursued their own active hobbies throughout their lives. At times, my mother lamented that she had dreamt of a different life, one with a career. The children thrived amidst their parents' creativity. Even though we were not rich, we were the first in the neighborhood to own a car. And then later, the first to own a television and a telephone. My parents were progressive, but were not able to embrace the PC and smartphone era. My father started out writing love letters, and later in life he confessed his love through the purchase of the latest model of electric appliances. My mother loved to read and read daily from newspapers and magazines, books and journals. Her thirst for information was unquenchable. My parents were survivors of the Depression, World War II, and circumstances. It was their time to live. They thrived and they had high hopes and big dreams for their children. I was their firstborn. I consider myself an in-between child of the ages, with a curious step into the future, but with deep roots in the past. I'm not proficient in the language of emojis, and I still love to receive and write handwritten letters. I have surfed the internet for decades. I have embraced social media, and I broke through some barriers of convention. I feel alerted to remain aware of the dangers. Danger of what the future and the unknown may bring. Is it good? Is it bad? These are questions that are being raised by the in-between generation. Our children are digital natives, and many of our grandchildren are born with an innate tendency for technology. There is so much we don't know, and we want to be protective. With the passing of my parents, an era has come to an end in our family. The children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are now left to create their own legacies. They are yet to be dreamed up, yet to be lived out. The good and the bad, it's all change and choice. A diverse river of life that needs both to be alive, to renew itself, steadily flowing to avoid stagnation. The one can only be known because of the other. Ever-changing is the remaining solace. In the meantime, in Great Britain and the Commonwealth, they went from declaring, "Long live the Queen," to "Long live the King." How long remains to be seen.